Hi, I'm Selena for Who is Jesus Today. How are you all doing out there, everyone, in the world? If you happen to pass through this channel, that's a question I'm asking you. How are you doing? In honor of Women's History Month, we're still in the month of March, I'm going to talk a little bit about Jesus and his interaction with a particular woman called the Samaritan woman and St. John chapter 4. I won't go all the way into this chapter, and I did do some teaching on this probably about over a month ago, a little over a month ago. But being that it is Women's History Month, I would like to highlight the relationship of Jesus with women in his day and how they also interacted and responded to him. And this is a very a good story to elaborate on, because this Samaritan woman, she's got some struggles, but there's nothing that she is facing that cannot be handled by the care and the love of Jesus toward her. St. John 4. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being weary from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Okay, so now a woman of Samaria, that's her background. That is if you want to say, an ethnic group at that time. They also belong to Israel as far as I know, but it is a different sect of Jewish population. And they were not really considered the same as other Jews. So there are some issues here also of bias, okay? Yes. So a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." Give me a drink. So now think about this day and time, because things have changed. When we talk about the history of women, it's so deep. There's so much to our story. There's so much to our tapestry, that who can really represent that more than us? Because we feel this. We feel it biologically, but we also feel this so much emotionally, because the emotions and the biological makeup, they are connected. So she is surprised that Jesus is approaching her in this way. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." So, no dealings. Right, they can go all around the town just to avoid coming in contact with Samaritans. Sounds familiar? There's nothing new under the sun. Right. People have been having issues with one another for a very long time. Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." So see, I am not going, I gave a teaching earlier. You can find that video, there is a lot to this chapter. It is more than just the interaction of Jesus with a woman, a Samaritan, a woman, but it's also referring to the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Jesus had not been crucified yet, so he is speaking of that which is to come. It's a foretelling, and it's really what he is saying to her is going to impact her life so much. But what really impacts her is that he knows her. He knows this woman where she is. So that's what I want to really highlight. In this particular context, the interaction between the woman and Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to go right to this. Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband." So Jesus, now he's on to something. That's the sensitive spot. That's the nerve right there, right? Hit the nerve. "Go call your husband and come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly." So she doesn't have a husband, but she is with someone, and he says she's had 5, so she's been in and out of relationships. Yes, I'm sure we've come in contact with women like that in our lives. Maybe some of you have had several, failed relationships where you felt it was going to work, looking for love. This is not to bring anyone down, but to actually lift you up. The way that Jesus, he points out her wrongs, right? He knows where she is, but he is there to lift her up above it. Yes, he is. And so the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worship on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where was the place where one ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth." And there is more layers to this chapter, other than the fact that yes, this is an interaction that isn't supposed to happen between this particular woman, and probably with a woman in general, but to add to that, she is a Samaritan and Jesus is a Jew, and so she's making that distinction. She kind of like knows her place in a way. She is calling out how the Jews distinguish them, okay, and don't want any dealings. But Jesus, he bypasses barriers. That's right, he crosses right over it, because this is the Son of God. He is not going to be concerned with that, what the Jews say. I mean, Jesus is a king of the Jews. He's on a plan. He has a plan and a purpose here. So he meets this woman where she is, and he doesn't pull her down any further, but he actually, she is really energized. And as we go on with this chapter, she goes back into town, and she tells that she met a man who knew about her life. And and when she wanted to inquire who he is. He is letting her know that he's the Messiah, as you read on down in the chapter. So she begins to proclaim that she met a man, right? And he says that he is the Messiah. Already you can see this is like the onset of some evangelism here. And this is a woman. And so, certainly God uses and empowers, equips women to go and to share his word and the truth, and to proclaim who is the Lord Jesus. And this woman was used, and this was not like a like what we're going to say, a girl that has been following all of the rules, right? All of the moral rules. She has a lifestyle that even if you said today a woman comes to you and says she has 5 and 6 husbands, you go, wow, like that person has really been out there, right? But it also says that she is, I would say, looking for love, and she didn't find it yet. But that encounter with Jesus meant so much to her that I'm sure she felt like this is the fulfillment that I've been looking for. And that's who Jesus is today. He meets us where we are, in our place of confusion, of addictions, of fear, abandonment, isolation. You've been married a couple of times, or you've had a couple of relationships that have failed. That does not alienate you from experiencing Jesus and having him transform your heart and give you a new life so you can begin a new walk. So, who is Jesus today in reference to women's history? That's some of it right there. You can read this more in St. John, the 4th chapter, the Samaritan woman. Now, before I close out, that was God's Word, Jesus and women of his day, but Jesus' love still extends to us women today. Now, I had made a video just recently. Actually, I made last 2 videos. And so I was speaking a lot, and I actually got back, I made a comment online, and someone kind of gave some feedback, and they asked me, have I heard about gender affirming clothing? And yes, I have. Also, there is such a thing as being also a gender, say, neutral. And I know that. I am very aware of that. And I feel that anyone can be a gender neutral. Right. That's just, sometimes that's just a choice. That's not always referring to sexual orientation. That could also be a preference of style, right? Would you say that how I'm looking now is gender neutral? Or is this a representation of a particular style, a belief? Well, it's a couple of things. It depends on how you're going to make your association. Depends on who you are, what you know already, your background knowledge, and what you may also know about me. Okay, so I like to wear, let's begin here. I like to wear scarves. I tend to wear scarves when it is really cold and chilly, because I do not like hats. My mom used to try and force me to wear a hat. I just don't like feeling anything on my head. I really don't. But a scarf is it's not tight. You don't really feel it much. And it covers the ears. And you're covering your neck. Sometimes you can cover even your mouth if it's really cold enough. And I'm not covering my entire head, but yeah, sometimes, yeah, you can just, And I actually like scarves. So there's one thing you can draw on. I can wear this because it's cold. Okay? So that's one representation. Okay, so what's the next one? What else can you actually think of? Let's say a fashion. I actually do like this look. I happen to like this look. I remember seeing Jackie Onassis wear scarves, but really silk scarves and shades. I actually fell in love with that fashion a long time ago. So this can be a form of fashion. Depends on where you live in the world. Okay, so now we got with the weather. Yeah, I have worn these scarves because I want to keep my head warm. And I also do like the fashion, but I don't just wear it for the sake of fashion unless it's actually cool outside or chilly. Now let's go into another representation. How about religion? Okay, so I would imagine when you look at me, you would assume that I may be from one of the countries where Islam is practiced, right? And there are many countries, so you can associate me with a belief system, and most likely you would say I'm a Muslim woman, right? And that's one way of looking at it. You would not know unless I told you. You can look at me like this, and then you will just maybe assume that. Okay. Now, it's probably not so likely to assume that I may be wearing this also because I'm a Christian woman. Because unless you know also the history of Christianity back in the more earlier days, and even now in some parts of the world, Christian women also cover their heads. Not all, but there are still Christian women who cover their heads. And if I was Orthodox Ethiopian, and I'm not, but if I was, then you could likely also find me wearing a scarf like this. And even of the same color, by the way. That is if I belong to the Orthodox Ethiopian Church, and that is a Christian faith. Okay, so we got the weather, the fashion, and religion. And like I say, I could represent a woman from a Muslim region of the world, or I can be from a country, say in Africa, like Ethiopia or Eritrea, where women do cover their heads still, who are Christians. There are women who cover their heads also like this in India, and they may not be a Muslim or a Christian. You see, it's just something that I have seen amongst women there. Yeah, and they might be Christians, or they may not be Christians, and they might be a Muslim, or they might be a Hindu. I mean, honestly. So, do you see how we make these references to populations or to beliefs? And more than likely, looking at me like this, you would not automatically assume I'm cold. That's why I'm looking this way. Or this is my fashion trend. Okay? And so here's the case in point. As a woman, okay, this automatically, though, relates to a gender expression that is more than likely feminine. Do men cover their heads? Yes, they do. But I've seen the covering style to be different. This automatically, there are times that when I have worn a headscarf, I see how people also relate to me differently, more skepticism. Do you think that I would be asked if I went to a place and I'm doing, like, say, an application, that someone would say to me, so how do you identify? You know, like they will look at me and say, how do you identify? And as you know, she or he or they or them, right? Do you think that would be really asked that? I believe there's a 95% chance I won't. Because they're making an assumption by looking at me, how I am representing myself, that I identify as who I am and who I look like, a woman. And they may be assuming that I am from a belief system or a culture that automatically there is just no other option to identify with. You're either a woman or you're not. Right. There's no option. You don't have a list of pronouns. You know, you walk into the room and everyone says, yeah, I'm not going to ask this person how they identify. It seems to be very obvious how they identify. Either they are a woman with a belief system, and that's why they look this way, or I don't know, maybe they just think that I am from a particular cultural affiliation where women look this way and cover their heads. The number one reason would probably be religion, and that would cause them to automatically probably not just come out and ask me, how do I self-identify? I would say very likely that the woman that Jesus was talking to, the Samaritan woman, looked something like this. That she more than likely had some type of head covering, because that was also common in that time. You see? So we cannot get around garments, fashion. All of these are expressions. It's expressions of one's fashion choices, one's beliefs, their religion, and also it could be related to the climate as well. But I would say more than likely this would say that I am connected to a religion, and very likely it would be a Muslim, probably before they would think of any other religion. But there are women in other beliefs that also can wear a head covering, by the way. So I wanted to point this out because there's so much to being a woman, a lady, and I feel like we are losing some of our ground of our true identities and history. And it's more than just what we wear. And it isn't only about giving birth, but it's also our historical journey on the planet as women, our struggles, right? There's just so much to the tapestry of being a woman that I want us to reflect on this month in women's history. And as soon as I take off this, and by the way, I like wearing headscarves. I like it for fashion, and I also like it for what else I like it for? Oh, when it's cold. When it's cold. But I do like to wear a headscarf. Anything except for a hat. Okay? And so when I take off this, I'm a different person, it seems. Now there's a flower in my hair. That's another representation. A feminine representation. And yeah, so then sometimes with the flower in here, then people automatically assume I'm somewhere from a tropical place. You see? And then when you take out that flower, and then, urban girl, right? It's amazing how associations are made of identity, or even a sexual identity and preferences, based on what we can add on to ourselves. Accessories, I guess scarves are accessories, depends on how you wear it, because if I wrap the scarf around my head, say like this, then that's another representation. I don't know what they would think with this, like this. But it's amazing how people think and how they approach you, not just based on how you look, but what you are adding on to yourself. Right? Accessories, attire, colors. There's so much representation in that. That has been my point. And that's why when I was speaking about, say, transgenders, I understand what they are feeling in themselves emotionally. But at the same time, women have gone through a long history of many different types of challenges and struggles just because we are women. And yes, and we don't get to always pick and choose those struggles. They come to us just because of who we are. You see? Right. It doesn't matter if you wear flowers in your hair or not. If your gender has been a female and that's been going on for all of your life, then you know what you have had to face as a woman. And that's why I think that this is very special, and we need to, as women, have a special place. That it's not just putting on the dress and the makeup and the heels, but we have a story. Just like this Samaritan woman has a story. You see, the men in her day more than likely would not have been so looked down upon or discriminated for having several partners in their life. But for a woman, that was a big deal. And a whole lot has not changed around the world, that a woman can be judged more severely for having a lifestyle such as this with several partners as opposed to a man. So women have been through a lot. But what I love about who is Jesus then and today is that he still crosses over all the barriers and all the biases about that causes walls to be built between people and genders, and he just comes right to where you are, and Jesus will meet you where you are, wherever you are. If you're not still sure about deciding who you are, Jesus will meet you in that place too. Okay, thank you for your time. You can like and subscribe. And until next time, shalom.